Hello, I'm Dr. Catherine Horton. I would like to explain the video that I've uploaded this morning at 4 a.m., which is called a hack attack and brutal hack attack and brutal attacks every 60 seconds. I want to explain what you can actually see in that video. So what you could see in darkness last night was essentially this measuring device placed down like that on the bed, and I had a camera pointing at this. Also put down on the bed, and I was essentially trying to sleep next to it as well as I could. This was at 4 a.m. in the morning, so between 4 and 5 a.m. in the morning, after I've been tortured and abused and assaulted in the most horrific, psychopathic, really psychopathic. I know I say that word a lot, but that's what it is. It is the most callous, brutal, criminal assaults on you, and it's essentially a world premiere in for normal people. I know that to agents this has been done already before, but to normal people this is a world premiere and utter sadism. It's essentially what's being done to the victims are death camp experiments, as people keep reminding me. But anyway, so this is what it is. I'm now in a death camp experiment in my own home, and I was struggling to actually record it and prove it that this is happening. And last night was a breakthrough because I could just prove that at 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. in the morning what was happening was so unusual, and was also correlated with absolute insane pain that I felt. And in the video what you can also hear is that eventually towards the end there's one ginormous shot to my, I never know where my liver and my kidney are, frankly. It sounds stupid, but I don't know. And all I can tell is that it's roughly in the area of my kidney, maybe on my liver. And I received an insane shot where, it's almost like you get, you have a knife pushed into your back. And it's because that's essentially what it is. You've been internally damaged. And you basically hear me burst out crying in the video. And this is after hours of physical abuse, that is like nothing any human being has ever experienced before, in the history of mankind. Apart from those people who already, had this stuff tested on, because, we used to be safe in our own homes and we're not anymore. So what you saw was essentially this little measuring device placed down, and I'll show you again. It looks like this is the EM Fields Acousticom 2. It's called an electrosmog detector, but you can use it to record attacks. It's measuring in the range 200 megahertz to 8 gigahertz. Units are volts per meter. I'll rattle down the scale. It's a non-linear scale. 0.01, 0.02, 0.05, 0.1, 0.3, 136. There's a factor of 600 between the lowest intensity and the highest. Okay, so what you saw was this thing placed down. If I turn it on, there's a little green light, and the green light means that what this is measuring is essentially conclusive. If there are many frequencies in this broad range overlapping, this thing often turns red, and in many attacks this thing is actually turning red because I'm so irradiated with many frequencies at the same time. One display, it has to prioritize which of the many peaks it's measuring it's actually displaying, and then it says warning, warning, what you're seeing might not even be the main thing you want to measure. So that's the little red light, as I understand it. So you saw it placed down like that, and last night the Wi-Fi was off. So instead of being here on 0.1, it was essentially down here in the green area, or the first yellow LED. So that's on 0.01 and 0.02. So it was really all the way down here. And then every time there was an attack, like now, these are attacks. And the attacks, I should say, have been fired at me every couple of seconds. In the beginning, in January, they assaulted me, for an hour. And then there would be a break, and then would assault me for an hour again. As far as I could notice. And it just ramped up and up and up. And every time I went to the High Court in London to get an injunction, I had 3 hearings, it would step up and become even more brutal. It's like retaliation, like we're going to disintegrate you. And this is how the intelligence agencies are. They basically have never ever had to face the public with their own agents. They just maimed and murdered freely. and now they want to do the same with the civilian population. And if you turn around and say, actually, can you stop maiming me, they flip out. They really flip out and like, who are you? We're gonna look what we can do. And they will have this really just jeering and dominant and macho posture, which to anybody who's lived their life in not amongst essentially mental patients, which is what the intelligence agents actually are, but amongst normal people, this sort of behavior is absolutely incredible. But so last night was a breakthrough, because essentially I could actually show not just these brutal attacks, how it jumped from the lowest intensity by a factor of 600, you know, every minute, every 60 seconds. That's a breakthrough, okay? I could actually show it. There was no other background. There's no reason for it to always jump by a factor of 600 if it was just random background, which it cannot be, okay? In the middle of the night, there's absolutely nothing happening here where I live, okay? So suddenly you had these factor of 600 jumps, you know. I couldn't give you the audio output, you know, but you already saw the intensity. So the audio gives you kind of a feel for the structure of the beam. The assaults sound very, very, very rough. You know, it literally sounds like, you know, like, because many frequencies and many pulses are just deposited in you like that. So it was a breakthrough, because essentially I could prove this, you know, factor 600. That this happens is already, you know, odd enough. But then it happened every minute, so I could prove the frequency. And in the video you can see it's timed by a computer, because as the video is playing out, it's always happening in the same second. Okay, so it happened, if you watch the film, it happened at 1 minute 37 seconds, 2 minutes 37 seconds. Unfortunately, if I turn this on and I'm trying to sleep next to it, if this is on for very long, eventually it will go off, you know. And I had it on for quite some time before I started filming, just because I was checking myself, you know, can I see anything on this? And I was setting up the camera, and this was running in the meantime. So that's why by 3 minutes 37 seconds you can see this thing go off literally the second before. But anyway, as soon as I turned it back on, it started firing, and you saw shots at 4 minutes 37, 5 minutes 37, 6 minutes, and 7 minutes 37, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 37, exactly on the second. And for a human being to be doing that every minute at 4 a.m. in the morning is unlikely. What they do, and this is what it proves, is that they put down transmitters and these microwave guns in neighbors' houses, and they set a script running, and it just keeps shooting at you in your sleep. And if you rotate in your sleep, or if you, I also noticed if I change the room and sleep somewhere else, it will assault me on exactly the same point on my body. And that's because these are autonomous systems. They essentially run the pattern recognition themselves. They will find you, they'll find your body shape, and they'll hone in literally with a precision of 1 centimeter on exactly the same point, and they'll just keep hitting you. So there's no way to escape from this machine, you know. Sometimes I would be hit on just 1 point on my head over and over every second, or sorry, not every second, every minute, or every 30 seconds. And I would go from Switzerland to the UK, and on the drive from Manchester to London, I was again assaulted with the same frequency on the very same point within 1 centimeter. You suddenly had the same ache, you know. But it was also combined with cars overtaking me and hammering me on the head as they overtook and stuff like that. So you can tell this is assault weapons placed in cars. And I think what's happening is that the steering software is so good, it can now autonomously map you out, track you, and target you. This sounds incredible, but then again, think about your mobile phone, okay? Most cameras, if you've got a newer model, if you turn on the camera mode and you point it at people, automatically these squares start appearing. And that's because there's pattern recognition software coming with your phone, and it's so cheap, it's now being shipped to your phone for free. You don't have to pay extra. It's not a software you download, they just give it to you. You know, I mean, in a sense, it's in the price of the phone, but, you know what I mean. You get it for free, essentially, with the package. And that's just crappy little software you put on your or that you have on your phone. This is not military grade, stuff. So that's essentially what's happening. And what the video you saw is ultimate proof that I'm being shot at, you know, number one, because you have these factor 600 increases in intensity and they just get punched into me. You can also see that sometimes it doesn't jump up to the same point. So the same point is 6, and sometimes you can see if you take screenshots and look carefully that sometimes it jumps up to 1 below, and that is because this thing isn't on my body. And what I'm being shot at with is a pencil beam the size of a pound coin. And I would only measure the full intensity if the beam would be passing through this. But instead, it's like lying next to my head, you know, 20 centimeters away. And then what I'm measuring is essentially the beam halo. And the beam that actually hit me is much more intense than what this thing would measure. And as I'm being shot at on different parts of my body, this measuring device, which is staying in the same place, but the beam is being shot, you know, further down, and then this doesn't actually measure the full intensity, you know. So, and also depending on which direction the beam is coming from. So a beam that's essentially being punched through me, say through my liver and through my kidney, and it goes up and through this, will be showing high intensity, but a beam that maybe, you know, goes past it will again just be the beam halo. So it very much depends on how they overcross the beams to actually hit me, you know. And as I explained in the previous video, if you want to have 3D resolution, you overcross 2 beams. Okay, if you just shoot 1 beam in, you essentially all along the beam line that passes through your body, you should feel pain. But if you've got 2 overcrossing beams at the crossover, you've got twice the intensity. And then, you know, you can just have this 1 beam line, and depending on how you line the other beam, you can have control the depth at which you will be depositing twice as much energy. And it will be in this crossover that you'll feel this intense pain. And that's how they can map out your internal organs. And the computer does the calculation. So all you have to do is just click, probably, you know, and say liver. And it will be just finding my liver and just shooting holes into my liver. And essentially, this is exactly what happened last night. So I was being shot on my head most of the time. The vast majority of the time I'm being shot on my head, and that's because I'm an academic and my head is my most precious thing, and they want to always destroy what's most precious to you. So I get just punched and punched and punched with these things, which is terrible because they're destroying me neurologically, but in this case, fortunately, we don't have nerves in our brain. So what you feel is essentially the actual, you know, what's it called, like not nerves, but the actual pathways being triggered inside your head. That is the pain. It's not the same sort of pain that you feel when it's actually punched into your body. And when it's punched into your body, it's agonizingly painful. And that's what you essentially saw. I am there. I'm already saying in the video at some point, I have received so many shots to my head. And at the time, I was just trying to sleep. I thought, I'll place this down, I'll turn it on, and I'll leave it to measure. And I was dozing, essentially. I was so exhausted by 4 a.m. after literally over 3 hours of physical abuse. And all I wanted to do is be awake enough so that, I mean, through your eyelids you can see as the light is on. When it suddenly goes off, I just have to press the button, so every 10 minutes or so, or 5 minutes, whatever it is, I have to press the button. So what you saw last night is me lying there absolutely exhausted. It's like essentially an abuse victim who's just been hammered around the head for the last half hour by thugs, and is just lying there and internally utterly damaged, and my body's trying to repair. I'm exhausted. I am in an emotional state of just an abuse victim. And then I'm just trying to measure the assaults. I'm sleeping, and whilst I was making the video, I didn't even see what this thing was showing. So it was essentially, a total surprise for me that this is what it showed. And what you saw is that every minute you have these shots. Then suddenly because the shots were always at 37 seconds, and then at minute 13, 2 seconds or 3 seconds after 13 minutes, so 13:03 or 13:02, there's a hack attack. So suddenly you can hear my laptop beeping. And that's because I had a second measuring device next to me, which is, oops, oh God, I almost yanked it off the table. It's expensive measuring equipment. This is essentially this antenna with a readout connected, and that's connected to a laptop. And I was trying to measure the assaults on me, also with this more sophisticated antenna, not just this little box. And the antenna doesn't have the same range. It doesn't go up to 8 gigahertz, only 4 gigahertz. But on the other hand, it goes down to 100 megahertz, not just 200 megahertz. So, trade-off. But then it can also display it on a computer. It comes with a software. And the laptop was next to me, and the antenna was next to me, and reading it out. And essentially I wanted to record the shots that I'm receiving on my head and so on. But because this laptop is hacked, and it would take me ages to, even if you reinstall the operating system, as soon as you connect it to the internet, they're back, So that laptop is controlled. And I always mean the intelligence agencies, okay? So when the intelligence agencies want to do some novel sort of assault, I realized that the laptop will be just thrown, so it will just throw up errors, and there will be just a spectacular hack attack, and things will go crazy. And the time it takes me to actually have that under control again, I'll be just assaulted with whatever, they want, but they don't want it to record it. And, this is how it would usually go. And I've got lots of videos of exactly these sort of hack attacks. And in the very beginning, when I first started measuring, that's when I received the first hack attacks. They didn't want me to even just set up the software. They wanted to frustrate me. But, unfortunately, I'm a particle physicist. The one thing that I had to do as a particle physicist is just, painstakingly remove software errors from complex software and just deal with computers. So I've got essentially infinite patience when it comes to that. So I set it up regardless. I continued, and then the hack attacks magically stopped. And I could run the data collection software for sometimes 16 hours per day, and there wouldn't be a single mistake. But then when I started measuring at night, the hack attacks again started firing up, and I couldn't measure for longer than 2 minutes. How curious. So there, what you can see at 13 minutes is a hack attack. And it's very important because you see, and this is like usually if when people talk about hack attacks in big corporations, they are silent. You don't notice that the hackers are there. They access the computer from the background. There's no reason why the mouse has to go like that. So this is a very spectacular, demonstrative sort of hack attack. It's meant to intimidate and meant to show you, yeah, we're there, we control it. And therefore, they literally have to write a bloody script to make the mouse go crazy and, have all these windows open and close and throw you. And in that moment, you cannot control the laptop. But, a normal hack attack, if you just want to hack a laptop, you just do and you go, So this is not a normal hack attack. This is, if you like, an intimidation hack attack. As much as when they come into your flat, it's not a robbery, it's a Stasi-style break-in to disconcert you, So this is the computer equivalent of a Stasi-style break-in. It's for show, for intimidation. It's not actually, they've been on the laptop, there's nothing to get there anymore. So, but what you saw is that after the hack attack, the assault protocol changed. So first of all, at 13:02 minutes, I've got the hack attack, right? And then I shut the computer down. I tried to go back to sleep. And what they started doing is they started moving my facial muscles. And you don't have control over that. I never had spasms or something like that. I sleep very calmly and always have. But what they have been doing is read out my brain print. And this is why the frequencies that are being pumped into my home are in this range 400 to 700. That's what the whistleblower, Dr. Paul Bacho, blew the whistle on. He said those are essentially brain interference frequencies that's known to interfere with the brain, but it can also be used to read out your brain print. And when your brain is working and is moving the muscles, it essentially generates an electrical signal inside. And these days the sensors are so fine, you can read out this field. And when you can read out the field, you can generate the field again and then irradiate your head and then recreate the current, if you like, recreate the same current that produced this field and do essentially the same thing in reverse. And once the current is there and it was used to trigger muscles, it will trigger the muscles again. Okay, and that's what they've been doing with me now for months. They've been reading out my brain print, and these degenerate, sorry, I'm using the word degenerates a lot, and so on, and psychopaths, but that's what they are. because it's just inhumane what they're doing. And they also announced that this is what they're going to play around with after my third High Court hearing. So, you know, everything is always announced, and that's almost like, it's like the sadistic getting off, you know. It's, we do this to you, there's nothing you can do to change it, and then the idea is that you'll be dreading it, and, oh, be even more upset, and then they do it to you, and hey, that's so much power, and they get off, and they feel great, and they can have their little sadistic reinforcement in the group, which is what it's really about, you know. So they have announced this, and this was essentially, there was always stuff happening when I went to the court. I had 3 hearings. The first time I got a death threat, 3 days later, assassination attempt. The next time I went, again, street theatre and harassment and, you know, muscle pulsing and lots of stuff. And, you know, by now so much has happened, I sometimes mix things up. But one thing I know for certain is that before the 3rd hearing, the night before, there was street theatre. And the street theatre was, the next day I was due to appear in court. I'd flown out from Switzerland. I'd gone to my hotel and it was late at night and I just wanted to get out and get some fresh air. So I went for a walk and my camera was essentially it's on my phone, and my phone was flat. So I left it in the hotel on the charger and I went out. And as soon as I do that, and as I don't have my camera to film, you know, that's usually when the street theatre is ramped up. And so I went, you know, I was staying pretty close to the Royal Courts of Justice because I had to go there the next day. So I just went down to Trafalgar Square and then walked along towards St James's Square. That's kind of like a fairly safe area to be because it's surveyed. You know, if there's one area in London that's surveyed, it's there, you know. And so you're fairly safe, yeah, unless it's them you're afraid of. But anyway, so, you know, I walked along there and then I was just behind St James's Square where there are all these antique dealers, and I walked through that street and there's, you can turn off and there's, I think, called Moretti's or Morelli's, you know, medieval paintings on your right, and then a cufflink shop at the left. And I just walked through there and walking towards the Economist offices, and this guy cycled around the corner, was swerving around on a bike. I mean, who the hell drives, you know, uses a bike in London in that area? Doesn't matter. So he was on a bike, you know, swerving around so that he catches my attention, and he was wearing camouflage uniform, you know, all the way, and the camouflage uniform had a big German flag here. It's just curious because I think German uniform has the flag here, but anyway, it was like so that you see it. So German flag, and then on his head he had a ginormous helmet with green LEDs running, you know, left and right. And, you know, I mean, you see all sorts in London. And I was just walking along with my music in. And then this guy cycled up towards me and then slowed down next to me and said something to me, which I didn't catch and frankly couldn't give anything about. And then he cycled off. So this was, again, typical street theatres targeted at me. And then you can wonder, what the hell does this pantomime mean? You know, German military mind control, maybe? German military mind control experiment? Pfft, you know? Yeah, whatever. And but then essentially after my 3rd High Court hearing, I mean, they have done mind control type experiments on me before then, because for the 6 weeks I was preparing for my 3rd hearing, they had pumped my home so full with brain interference frequencies I was paralyzed. I've never experienced anything like that before in my life, and I just couldn't function. It was just paralysis, where you're just staring at the screen and you think you're thinking, and suddenly you wake up and it's half an hour later, you know. Sometimes people have that, but, you know, I don't mean like that. I mean like that, but just much more extreme. So that for 6 weeks, what you achieve is maybe 1/10 of what you would achieve normally. And also combined with paralyzing fear, utter, like, mental lockdown. And that was essentially, eventually I figured out, you know, I found Dr. Baccho's whistleblowing, and I figured out that this is what it is, and I, you know, measured it, and I focused in on this area, 400 to 700 megahertz, and was full. And I do have photographs of my measuring device from before that time, and it shows a peak at 560 hertz, but nothing else. And now the peak at 560 is still there, but also lots of frequencies around it. And I think what they started doing there is they announced, now we're going to read out your brain print. So instead of just bombard you and slow you down, we're now going to take control over your brain. And that's exactly what they did. So over the last month, since July, my hearing was on the 25th of July, I have been bombarded. And essentially in your own home, you're essentially in a ginormous, non-stop EEG MRI machine, you know, and you can feel beams moving around inside your brain. I mean, by the way, your brain gets utterly demolished in the process, because you have essentially tumor seeding frickin' microwaves being beamed into your head, damaging your brain, causing micro lesions, damaging you in ways that you cannot possibly imagine for life. But they did that so that in the end they could move my hands. And now when I lie in bed, you know, beforehand I used to be just muscle pulse. So they I think maybe they do that with brain print as well, but it didn't really. I mean, maybe they do, I don't know. But they would literally just pulse one single muscle and you can't control it. You know, it's almost like a spasm, but a major muscle would be doing that. And sometimes they would shoot pencil beams and they would harass me. You would lie down at night and they would just, you know, shoot you in the genitals and stuff like that. And that would be their game. And now, once they've read out, it's like, oh, we're moving your hand, you know. And meanwhile, your brain gets worked by this AI machine. So your brain gets exhausted. It gets fried. And it's just like, oh yeah, we managed to move your hand. I mean, yeah, I can move my hand as well. Do you know what I mean, guys? And that's what you guys are doing. And this is it. This is just the end state degenerate bullshit that we're dealing with. And actually, if you Google MI5 and MI6 exposed, a lot of the stuff, if you read it the first time, it probably doesn't make a flaming bit of sense. And that's because I think those agents are referring to technology that has been, you know, used on them, and things that have been done to them that are essentially this technology. And it has been done to them so often. It's like, you know, for them, something normal. It's like the acronyms you use at work. You know, everyone understands what you're talking about. But one of the things that you can read out from there is also people who seem to, I mean, all these agents seem to have their brain print read out so that they can be 100% controlled. You know, this is what it's about, control. It's just that when you control people, you end up with idiots, you know, and well, we see where this leads. And one of the things is that they just have these, I mean, they're all also messed up in the head because they're so traumatized and are abuse victims and are just vindictive, damaged people. And then if they really hate somebody, they turn on them because that's what they have been conditioned to do. And then they just, essentially, there's one bit where it sounds like, essentially they're having like a mini office feud. And it sounds like they're using the brain prints that had been read out and are stored in a computer to irradiate each other and make each other do funky stuff, you know. And eventually, because once you have the brain print, you can control any bodily function. So you can also control bowel movements and heart rates and everything. And then what do these people do? They give each other diarrhea. And that's essentially, like, that's the standard of intelligence, you know, of these people. But that's also the sort of nonsense that you can use this technology for. Nothing better than that. You can only use it for vindictive acts. And why? Well, there's a systems analysis reason behind it. It's because if you want to do it for anything more meaningful, you know, you have to let the person think for themselves, use the full capacity of the brain, not just what you can control. Okay? So, long story to just explain one note in the video, which is this triggering of facial muscles. And I think they have been building that up bit by bit. And I think the way they do it is that they cause pain or make parts of your muscles in your face twitch by themselves by using beams. And essentially that's the damage you can see on my skin here, you know, in many other places. I mean, part of it is just stress as well. And then, you know, it shows on my skin. But there were these deep injuries that I didn't know where they came from, and I think in my sleep they've been triggering these muscles and reading them out. And then essentially they can make you have any sort of face expression against your will, and you cannot control it because the signal that they beam generates the same sort of current in your head that you would generate when you decide to smile or, you know, you decide to do something. So that's psychopathic nonsense as well. So it's just one sentence under the video, you know, remote triggering of facial muscles, but that is the full story behind that. If you don't believe it's possible, it doesn't matter, because a lot of the stuff that we used to do at CERN, none of it was, by the way, dark or, against people ever. But it was technologically extremely sophisticated. And had I asked you if you think it's possible what I did every day, you probably would have said no. And I did it nevertheless, So I'm telling you as a physicist, this is possible. I didn't know it was possible, but now that I read leaked reports and, descriptions about the technology, I can extrapolate based on what I know our processing power was like in particle physics, okay? How we used to analyze large data sets and reconstruct really complex interactions, when you smash two protons together and just goes wham, that's pretty complex. And can I imagine that they can read out brain prints, and can I figure out how they would do it? And I think I can. Yes, I can imagine you just, pick up the electrical signal, you use Fourier transforms to decompose it, you pick out what's what, and you map it, and da-da-da-da-da. And with a lot of processing power and very sensitive sensors, I think it's possible. And what they've done to me is for me proof that it is possible and has been done. And basically me just having a little extrapolation based on the declassified public technology that we used to use in particle physics, already gets me 80% there. And then everything that's declassified is ahead of time. So, that last, bit explains the leap. So I can tell you with 100% confidence as a physicist that this technology exists. Your brain print can be read out already today. And what's being done to the victims is exactly that. But it is the ultimate Nazi experiment. It's the ultimate violation of the Geneva Conventions. It is the ultimate degradation of human dignity. Okay? So the fact that Germany does it, because this has been done to me in Germany as well, they have moved my facial muscles when I was just being driven in the car across Germany. And I was just, lying there relaxed, and suddenly your mouth is opened against your will, and it's repeated several times. It's horrific. And then you figure out once they have your brain print, they can just send the signal. And as long as they know what signal to send and they hit your head in the right way, or they just trigger the muscles, they can do that. But, so this was done in Germany by the Germans. And I'm pretty confident because, I've been shouting about the fact that I'm being targeted. So for an intelligence agency not to figure out who it would be doing it to me if it weren't them, right, would be just pathetic. So they do know, and it's them, So in Germany, I think it's them. If I'm elsewhere, it's someone else. It's whoever's on the ground. And they're all connected. They're all doing the same thing. But for the Germans to do that is essentially against the first clause of the Constitution, which is the Grundgesetz, the core, foundation law of Germany. And that is, die menschliche Würde ist unantastbar. Human dignity is untouchable. And this taking over people's brains and then just having a little laugh whilst they're on the motorway, like, oh, you can open their mouth and then make them go up. Well, that is essentially against human dignity. Okay? And ignorance of the law is no excuse. So if you're too freaking stupid to understand that, little grunts in Germany, it doesn't matter. It's still against human dignity because what you're running is essentially a Nazi experiment. You see? Sorry, I've just received such a massive pulse to my head. It's like when I get, when I start criticizing them, they just keep shooting pulses as if that would make a difference. I'm like, But anyway, and this was me controlling my hands, by the way. I'm not blaming that on them. So anyway, so this is now to explain the sort of Nazi death camp experiment experience that I already had faced that night, okay? And that had been done to me already in the beginning of the night, where I had just fallen asleep and they literally took my leg and they knocked it. And I'm not kidding, I'm not prone to jerks when I'm sleeping at night. I usually just go to bed, lie down, and I wake up in exactly the same position. That's me. That's, what I'm usually like. And there, they just used my leg and kicked basically moved my leg and then kicked my husband, with my knee right in the kneecap. I mean, it sounds stupid if I just say to you that, oh yeah, it can happen, and you don't know the entire story. It's like, oh yeah, these accidents happen, and it's really stupid. Good job you only kicked his kneecap. But this is not what it's about, because what they have been doing is also muscle pulse me, set of muscles in a systematic fashion, and then give my husband, so they muscle pulse you, up here your arm and then down that arm, so that you understand they're doing it, it's not just chance. And then they gave my husband literal fits in his sleep, like he is just spasming all his limbs, and it would just go on and on and on until I literally shake him up and wake him up again. And then he would be calm, he would fall asleep again, and they would have a rerun. And again, timed with muscle pulses, same pattern, move my muscles, just contract them a bit. And then my husband would have exactly the same fit, exactly at the same time, when they're finished with muscle pulsing me. So this is how they sadistically show you, yeah, we're controlling him, and look, we can give him epileptic fits. I mean, it's not a real epileptic fit, but look, we're controlling his brain. Ooh, are you now horrified? And it's like, what can you say? I mean, yeah, you can give people accidents and stuff like that, but if you really feel the need to kill off your productive members of society, something's gone badly wrong. So, long story to just explain that what you saw in just that short video was essentially bursts of violent attacks to my body, then a hack attack. Then I am saying, I think in the video, oh yes, my facial muscles are being triggered, and that's what it means. They started then irradiating me, working my brain against my will. An AI system takes over and controls my facial muscles. And then I receive a brutal attack at 14 minutes 59, so you can see it, and it hurts. Every single one of those bursts hurts like hell. Okay? And then there's a really long attack where you can just see it. I mean, the device is toppled over, and I'm still essentially getting the computer back into functional after the hack attack. And it's toppled over, but you can see the display just lights up, and it stays lit up for a very long time. It's not just a burst. And then the assault protocol changes, and now I'm assaulted every minute, exactly on the same second, but not at 37 seconds anymore, but at just 3 seconds after the full minute. And then it's 17:03, 18:03, at 19:03 this measuring device goes off, and then 20 minutes 03, 21, 23:03, and so on, all the way. And then at 26:03, they stopped shooting at my head, and they shot a ginormous pulse into essentially my back. But by that time, all of these, the bursts after the hack attack, I don't actually see anymore, because I've put my head back down. I'm not even aware that I have recorded, bursts on the minute beforehand. As far as I'm concerned, have got a headache. I'm desperately trying to find out why. I'm lying there. I'm woken up by this hack attack. I have to capture it again. Then I go back down, dozing. I notice that this display goes off. I turn it back on, and I lie there again. And 7 minutes later, suddenly I just get this massive, and it's literally like a dagger being just jammed into your back, because that's essentially what it is. It's just that the dagger doesn't pierce your skin, because as it goes through, at that bit, in the beginning, the beams are not overlapping. So there you don't have enough dosage to cause damage. But at the point where the two beams overlap, one beam comes from another neighbor, the other one comes from another transmitter at another neighbor's house. That hit me right inside in my inner organs. And that hurt so much. You essentially get stabbed with a dagger without having the outer layers damaged, but just your organ. And essentially what you saw there is one of my major organs being demolished, and it hurts, and you basically hear me burst out crying, because I've been maimed again in my own home. And what they've done in the past was me sitting at my desk and demolish one of my knees. They just kept shooting. I put aluminium on it, and as soon as that slipped, the AI system just hammered me exactly at the same point. And in the end, I had to get medical attention. And I'm just sitting at my own desk in my own home, and I have to get medical attention, or medical assistance for damage that someone else did to me. And if someone came into my home and took a hammer to my knee, I could sue them. But because no one understands these microwave beams, these psychopaths are running around and shooting at people and damaging them, maiming them, and thinking that they can get away with it. Do you see? This has become ever more brutal. Do you understand? So in the beginning, they didn't used to demolish my joints. Then they started a phase where they were literally targeting my hip. After I emailed the Bundesnachrichtendienst and after I submitted a claim to the IPT, so I don't know what triggered the assault, could be either because the two were very close together. After that, they literally damaged my hip. They irradiated me over and over on the same point until it got damaged permanently and it's still aching. That's what we're dealing with. This boundless, sexually sadistic maiming. Because, the sexual part also comes in because as a woman you do get also hit in other places. And, they enjoy it. The way they do it, you can tell that they're enjoying it. And after that, I get my knee demolished. Now it's down to internal organs, And it's very, very serious because essentially Britta Jacquard, who's been tortured to death in Germany with the Bundeskriminalamt watching. There were many reports, thousands of reports essentially to them already. And they are essentially a big Nazi hub, as far as I can tell, Bavaria is like the Nazi HQ. Not the only Nazi HQ, but, a pretty big one traditionally. And as far as I can tell, Britta Jacquard lived in Bavaria. And she was tortured to death, but she on her blog, which is still online, and please back it up. So Britta Jacquard, Britta, and Jacquard is Jaccard. You can find her, and there she's talking. It's in German, but she's talking about how after a while she had I think a kidney insufficiency, and she became jaundiced because her liver was demolished. Now, what that tells you is that these people, these psychopaths, kept shooting these essentially dagger shots into her liver until her liver was, demolished. Do you understand? This is what they're doing. You're lying in your own home and they just punch a hole into your kidney. Demolish your kidney. Inside your own home, you're just lying in your own bed and there's no way to defend yourself. And what they actually started doing that night is they started with an extremely agonizingly pencil beam, and they also systematically are trying to break up my marriage with my husband. My husband is so stressed. He works so hard. He can't take this psychopathology, and they know it because they're listening to every conversation that we have in the house, and they let me feel that they do that. And essentially my private space has been used by these psychopaths for the last half decade. And the senior handlers are these degenerate old wankers in their 60s who just come and grin at you, and you can see that they've got flushed faces and they're just so excited. They're living out their little, sadistic fantasy. And I think every woman in the world understands what's wrong with them. But, and that's how my life has been going. And now it's the ultimate, it's like, we're going to destroy your marriage, we're going to destroy your family, we're going to destroy your friends, we're going to destroy your health, destroy this whole. And meanwhile, this is essentially it. This is it. And this is how you can explain that 70% of the victims are women. Do you understand? Because this is not just human experimentation. It's sadistic old farts wanking. Do you understand? Because only that explains the data. Okay? So if anyone comes with, this is a national security issue, no, this is a wanking issue. So if you want to use D notices to cover up your wanking, I'm not sure if that's what the D stands for. Do you see? And you have all these newspapers who've been just told like thousands of times, you guys do not understand what national security is if you actually take those D notices seriously. It's a piece of paper given to you by an old wanker who's essentially embarrassed that he's essentially getting off on having mutilated women to death, and he rather would have 100-year lockdown on what a perverted old fart he is. Okay? That's how to read those D notices, and ask yourself, is that national security, or is the fact that you're basically being gagged by old perverts who then go around mutilating, okay, I don't want to call myself a top scientist, but your new young scientists who want to really help your country? Ask yourself, is that national security? Or is it maybe, should you invert the thing and say, actually the biggest national security issue in our country right now are these geriatric old wankers? Maybe that's how it is. So this is how to understand the video. This is what it means. Do you understand? And it also proves not just that I am being assaulted because you have these factor 600 bursts in my bedroom at night. You can see it's a computer doing it because it's every minute down to the second precise. You understand? So this is a computer system. The transmitters have been placed down at my neighbors' houses. Maybe they think these are surveillance cameras, but actually they're microwave guns. And they're shooting beams at me, which are calculated to overcross inside my body. And a computer system does the entire thing. And what you see in that video is essentially smoking gun evidence for that. Okay? Then you can see the hack attack happening. You can actually see a live hack attack happening. So victims get assaulted like with all this non-stop. It's like, we move your muscles, we move your limbs, you kick your husband in the knee, and essentially that drives your marriage apart as well because he's really angry at you. He doesn't understand the world, he will be stressed at work because he didn't have enough sleep. And then we're gonna still hammer your head, and then we're gonna, essentially demolish your kidney so that you're awake and you feel it. And we'll let you know how we're gonna demolish your inner organs one after the other. And this comes after I had so many shots to my heart, pencil beams dug into my lungs and stuff like that. So do you understand? After 11 months of this, maybe you understand why in the previous video when I talk about the agents and the psychopaths, the F word is almost every third word. It's because I do not have any more time for these people. The fact that I think that they can be repaired is kind. Personally, I think they should be exterminated. Okay? Really. I think that ultimately that would be the quickest way, but you're not allowed to say that, so let's just repair them bit by bit, Jesus loves you kind of style. But do you understand? So if you took umbrage that I use the F word every third time, you don't understand what I've been through the last 11 months. Do you get that into your journalistic head if you're listening? Please, because this is important, And then what you also saw, and this is now the last bit of smoking gun evidence, is that after the hack attack, the assault protocol changed. Okay? So essentially it was going all the way, then there was a hack attack. Remember, the AI can hit you on the same position wherever you are, and it does it automatically. So just because I moved position and I got up and I kind of restarted the computer, doesn't usually change the assault protocol. But nevertheless, it was exactly, I think, 3 seconds after 13 minutes that there was a hack attack, and then the assault protocol changed to be exactly on the 3rd second of every minute, timed with the hack attack. So this implies that the people who are hacking my computer, are the same people who are irradiating me. Do you understand? It's all one. I mean, unless it wasn't obvious, right? Because it just so happens you get hacked exactly the time when you're being assaulted. What are the chances? No, but what it also means is that these people control everything. It's an integrated system. Okay? Everything is integrated. It's one assault protocol. And also I can tell you that the assault protocol travels with me across country borders. This is why, even though I now live in Switzerland, I sued MI5 and MI6 in the British courts because they're the ones doing it. They put me on a list, you know. It's very unlikely that I'm being harassed for a year by British intelligence, and then when I move to Germany, all the Germans independently, you know, think it's a good idea out of those 80 million people to pick on me and harass me in exactly identical fashion to British intelligence using the same anchors sometimes, you know, the same sort of things I was conditioned to respond to. No, it's the same. It's the assault protocol established by MI5, MI6 following me to Germany. There it's done for years by, you know, the Germans, and now it's been done by the Swiss. But meanwhile, essentially the assault team and your assault program devised by the Brits travels with you, and they are in charge, you know. So my life gets demolished by these people, and that's why I'm suing them. I mean, the Germans are also guilty, and so are the Swiss. But, you know, I can't just have court cases in every single country I travel to, because then by now I would have to sue the Brits, the Germans, the Swiss, the Dutch, the Spanish and the Italians, because I got assaulted in every single country, you know. So, do you understand what you saw in that video now? Is this clear? Essentially, this is not normal to have, you know, 600 times the intensity burst into your bedroom. It's not normal to be exposed to that sort of radiation every minute. And I can also tell you that I only started recording at that time, and these shots have been happening every minute throughout the entire night. So just imagine what dosage I received. Do you see? It's so much radiation, it hurts. And on top of that, they crank it up to specifically demolish your internal organs, to give you jaundice because your liver stops working, as if you'd been an alcoholic all your life, and then they shut down your kidneys and they make you die. That's what they did to Britta Jacquard. And then when she died, there was a massive amount of corruption, and she got cremated very quickly. And the only reason you would cremate somebody that quickly is if you want to hide something that's in their body that needs to be, you know, gotten rid of at a very high temperature. And that to me implies that she had nanoparticles or implants in her body that are not that biodegradable. They would not decompose, and they had to be incinerated so that they melt. Okay? That's what the case Britta Jacquard shows you, and I ask you to make a backup of her blog for the coming Nuremberg trials, because what the case Britta Jacquard shows you is that German intelligence has tortured her to death, and the German police stood there watching. And this has happened in Germany before, right? And we know where that led. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. And the Germans have tortured not just Britta Jacquard to death. I have sent the German Bundeskriminalamt, the German federal police, a list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 21 people who either died under mysterious circumstances or literally committed suicide because they couldn't take it, or were tortured to death. And the Bundeskriminalamt sent me my physical letter back. I said it in the video before, but this is so amazing. I'll say it to you again. Here you can see Bundeskriminalamt. And they said, "Dear Frau Horten," I mean, you can read the letter yourself if you speak German. I'll translate it now. The most interesting sentence is the last one. I'll translate it to English, okay? So it says, "Dear Mrs. Horten, the Bundeskriminalamt, so the German Federal Police, is not in charge of your case. Your first point of contact should always be your local police service and the Attorney General, who, by the way, doesn't give a shit, and he's been told 1,000 times. And should the issues that you describe also happen in Switzerland, please contact the local police there." Well, I can't really contact the local police in Switzerland about having been assaulted across the full length of Germany. And also, if you get assaulted from traveling from Switzerland all the way up crossing every single of this, you know, I mean, not every single state of Germany, but like half the states of Germany. Which local police office shall I go to exactly? I mean, when I'm on the motorway and I'm assaulted, you know, in 2 different states of Germany, I would have to contact 2 different police stations, and then which one? The one left to the motorway or the one to the right of the motorway, or what? Because this is essentially nationwide and international terrorism, and the only police institution in charge of this is the German federal police. That's why they're federal, so it is their job. And then the final sentence is, we ask you to refrain from us. We ask you to refrain from writing to us again. And I wrote this letter and I asked them for case number for the 2nd time, because the first time they refused to give me a case number. And when they give me a case number, which by the way is Z1 12-2-5399, they sent back the physical letter I sent them, which I can show you. My signature is like down there, where I'm listing all the VIP victims and all the deaths. Here, down there, all the deaths, you know, listed according to the different years that they occurred in, you know, all the victims. And they send the physical letter back so that it doesn't appear in my file, so that they can claim that they were never told. And because they asked me specifically to refrain from writing to them again, I shall not write to them again. From now on, I shall speak to them or everybody else about them on YouTube. So this is the year 2016, when it looks very much like the Bundeskriminalamt has essentially fully taken on the criminal bit themselves, you know, and they have gone completely criminal. So this is now really the literal meaning of German, you know, federal criminal police. So, do you all understand now what we're dealing with? This essentially in systems analysis is called deep capture, okay? We're dealing with deep capture, international deep capture, and what we have to do is reclaim the police and the intelligence agencies in each country. You know, they have to get back, they have to be, you know, broken up and be autonomous again for this madness to stop, because they essentially are in deep capture by psychopaths, which is essentially the end state of any pyramid organization. This is not a surprise. This is essentially by design. You know, psychopaths go to the top, so they accumulate at the top. This is it, but the reality is that we're in the year 2016 and the intelligence agencies are running around and they are shooting at civilians inside their own home. And already 7 years ago, Carl Clark went public about this. The MI6 whistleblower Carl Clark went public 7 years ago, and nothing has been done, but a lot of people have died. So if you can help us shut this down, and if you can, you know, do something, I would ask you to please, if you understand what the proof means, what you could do is write to the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, because he's in charge of SIS, MI6, and he's the oversight person for SIS. And you have to tell Boris Johnson, you can write straight to SIS and maybe ask them what the F this is about. You could also write to the German ambassador in Switzerland called Dr. Otto Lampe, who's refused to help me, even though I'm a German citizen. And you can also write to the Bundesnachrichtendienst, who have an email. It's called zentrale@bundesnachrichtendienst.de. And essentially you have to go all the way to the top, and external people have to do that. You have to stand up behind the victims, and as an independent person, either turn to the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, or to the head of MI6, of the head of the German BND, or the head of the Swiss NDB, and ask them what the fuck this is. You know, if they have gone totally mad, and if they think reenacting the Gestapo in 2016 is a good idea. If you could do that, that would really assist us. Thank you.